do attendance stuff. I didn't have that in my slides, so.
You can if you want.
Okay, attendance.defsec.club, or
Yeah,
is it
also
Cybernet?
Both of them work.
Both of them work?
Just
Awesome.
rephrase. Just kidding, I didn't add it.
Okay, so I'll go back one
What was the
quick
second
before
one
we
you said?
begin. I was a bit stupid today.
Cybernet.
And when I was making the VApp that I was going to give to everyone, so that you could follow along, I made it in projects, not DefSec. So you guys don't get access, unfortunately, because I made a boo-boo. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I guess today I'll just show and you can watch me struggle with it. So going over what Splunk is basically a log aggregation service, and it allows us to see what's going on with our network, with our systems, and just basically any information we want to know instead of having to go to that specific device to see the logs. We get to bring them all together and view them in a much easier format. Yeah. The way that's primarily used is for either system failures in some way or network connections. So the way CCDC team uses it, or is at least hoping to use it, is that we're going to see what types of connections are being made to our boxes.
That's on the next slide.
I forget a bit of the presentation sometimes. Yeah, so the primary use for Splunk, as I was saying before, I guess, was that it allows you to know more about your network and your systems. Very useful to see like who's connecting to what, because like if you have a client box that shouldn't be getting any traffic to it from the internet and there's a bunch of traffic going to it, that's not good. Splunk lets you know that, hey, something's up. One, you should probably like be wary of people being on your box, and two, like get a firewall rule in place so that's not happening. And yeah, like I said, for CCDC, we're gonna get Splunk up hopefully to get it to watch network connections so we know what red team's doing rather than having to see the outcomes of it after they're in. So this is all written around you guys having the VM, unfortunately, or the VApp. It's not gonna work, unfortunately, so the place that you have to go to get Splunk is splunk.com. It's really nice and easy there. Then the steps to get it are a bit tricky. You gotta click on free trial, make an account, make your account, select the OS that you're installing Splunk onto, and then it'll start the download for the installer. On Linux, what we will do is this is all coming from the assumption that it's downloaded, so we didn't have to wait for downloads to happen, but it's a very simple process to get this stuff downloaded. We're just gonna open up a terminal. And then we're going to do a sudo and basically this is all just wait, we gotta be in the right directory. That might be helpful. Now that we're here, we can do a sudo dpkg. This is just saying install Splunk from that executable install file we got. I don't know Linux. So while that's getting going, we will shift back to this. Oh yeah, basically, yeah, you go to your directory that has the Splunk installer there, and you can run this front part followed by whatever the file name is, and that'll start the installation process. Then once that's done, we'll go and actually start the full install process and getting it up and going.
Hey guys, in the meanwhile, I forgot to shill the REU. If you're looking for something to do over the summer and you want to do research in cryptography, privacy, or cybersecurity, get in contact with Dr. Wang. That's W-A-N-G. And this is the last summer we're doing it, so you should sign up if you want to do it.
Okay, now that we've got this installed, we're going to go to cd/opt Splunk. Oh gosh, there's a space. That's not supposed to be there. Bin, and basically this is just where the binary is stored. We're going to run sudo /Splunk Start and accept the license agreement. I could spell. Once you run this command and get it started up, it's going to have us enter administrator or username and password to allow us to log into the web interface. For simple purposes, I'm just going to use admin password one bang. But obviously you'd want to use something more secure.
What are you going to use during CCDC?
It's a great question.
Admin password 2@.
Classified.
Perfect. That's great. So now it's just gonna run through and show you all the fun stuff it's doing to get this set up, and then once we are finished, it will have a web server that we're able to go access and fun stuff.
So you're planning on hosting this on a Linux box?
Yes.
Continue.
Does the process differ if you're trying to set it up on a Windows box greatly?
So much. It's so much more confusing. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's Windows. But
Yeah.
We'll get to where you can find that process at the end. Yep, so there's that. Once it's all done with that fun stuff, we'll go to the web interface, which it's got a nice handy telling you where to go. It's just localhost on port 80. I mean, not 80, 8,000. And once this gets loaded up, we'll be at the login page. So this is where you would enter the username and password you set up. So very easy, just admin password one bang. Okay, now that we're in here, we've got all the fun Splunk stuff. You do get a bunch of tutorials whenever you click on something that you haven't visited before, which is super nice. What we're going to do, I'll go back to here quick. Yeah, so there's a nice tour that you can take for it, or we're just going to jump straight into adding our data, which for now will be coming from our other boxes. So we'll just click on the Add Data option. It'll bring us to this new page. Takes a bit to load sometimes. Yeah, so here's like an example of the tour that you would get. It shows you for each one, just general setup options for it and like how it works. We go to monitor. This will allow us to monitor based on the ports that we set up. We're going to choose TCP UDP because that's the way we're going to be forwarding our logs to Splunk. We're going to choose port 415 just because that's default for the one that Splunk listens on. And then a very descriptive source name is always useful. So we're going to hope that this works. It had a decent success rate in practice, but I'm just going to have both of them go through here. So I'm going to have the Debian logs I'm going to send and the Windows logs that are going to come here, and they're going to both come to this port. You could split this up because this next part's really neat. You can only allow a connection from like a specific IP. So you could set up multiple ports to be listening, but they can only accept data from specific IPs. So if I've got my Windows 10 box over here and my Windows Server 2019 box, they can be listening, or they can both be sending it to different ports, but my Windows 10 or Cody's Kali VM can't send malicious stuff through my Windows 10 port. It just provides an extra layer of security. Then in here, this is where it gets a bit tricky. It depends on what you're trying to monitor. So for source type, basically what this is saying is that we're going to take whatever data we receive, and it's asking like what it should be expecting. So like if we go down to operating system, you'll see here that you can get Linux messages syslog, just syslog and stuff like that. It's a great question. There's so much stuff here. They've got incredible documentation for it. It's just a bit dry sometimes. So if there's anything, if there is ever anything that you don't know, like what it does or what it's asking for, a quick Google search will pull up multiple blogs / help sites that will then point you to the docs, or you can just go directly to the docs. Those pull up too. Thinking about it, I should not have put them on the same port because we're going to listen specifically for syslog. App context will give you a bit of extra refining of that information if you want, but it's not necessary in this case. Just leaving it as the default is fine. For the host, let's go back to our slideshow and make sure I'm not giving you the wrong information. I guess we're starting a different section. That part was all extracurricular right now then. For getting that log information to Splunk, they've got a bunch of different ways you can do it. One of the most consistent that I found is the universal forwarder, which is basically they've just set it up to where it's integrated with Splunk in such a way that's a tiniest bit of a hassle to set up, but then it's gonna work. Other easy ways you can do it on Linux is Syslog, just syslog but better. Within reason, I don't know, not a Linux guy. Yeah, so system logging service lets us send our logs to Splunk. From the command line, we're only working with syslog because it allows us to use TCP. Syslog only lets us use UDP, and that's problematic because if we're trying to do a logging server, we need to be able to make sure that we get all of the information that we need from those logs. So we really want a protocol that ensures delivery. And then like I was talking about the Splunk's universal forwarders, that's what we'll use on Windows because Windows is crappy sometimes. Splunk Forwarding, this is where you can go to get it. It's, if you just look up universal forwarder, it's like one of the first links that comes up. Let's see. Yeah, this is just saying the steps to get it. It's pretty straightforward on their site. For Linux, and this could be completely wrong because I'm not a Linux person and it only worked a bit of the time in practice. Basically, we're going to edit the syslog configuration file and then add this line to it. So if we come back, oh, that was the wrong one, not the one I wanted. Never mind, not come back. I got it right here. We'll go into Debian. And basically, we'll just edit just to make sure I'm not on this. Yeah, etc rsyslog.conf. Oh boy. And this is just the configuration file for our syslog. We're going to go all the way to the end and add a new entry. The star.star is basically saying any file. If you want, you could change the first star if your naming convention is like mail something for your mail server, or like for your mail logs. Or you could change the second star up there to be like .log, .back, .something. Just be more descriptive in that if you want to send stuff. Then we're going to do 2 @signs, and this is why we're using our syslog instead of just syslog. If it were syslog, we would have to. If it were syslog, we would have to. Give me a second. We would only be able to use 1 @sign, and it would be via UDP. 2 @signs on our syslog signifies that it's going to be over TCP. Then we're going to be sending this data to our Splunk server. And I just know this IP address because I set the environment up, but it's pretty simple to figure it out. It's just whatever the internal IP address of your Splunk server is. So this case, I set it up so it was 192.168.1.2. Could be anything, just depends on how you set it up. And we're gonna say over port 514. We're gonna save that. And then we need to I can't type. Then we're going to need to restart the syslog service.
You don't need just on this slide. That works too.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're
Yeah, I again, yeah. So that should have it hopefully set up for Linux. We're gonna leave that one off then. Now we're gonna go to Windows. For Windows, like I briefly explained before, we're going to be using Splunk's universal forwarder. It just takes the log data that we specify and sends it to Splunk in a nicer way than we would be able to do normally with Windows command line and stuff like that. So again, normally go download it off the internet. I've just got it here for ease of demonstration. Once we get here, we're going to need to check this box to accept the license agreement and then specify that we're using an on-premises Splunk enterprise instance instead of a Splunk cloud. Then we're going to do next. These are new usernames and passwords if you want. They don't have to be the same. I'm going to use the same because it's easy to remember. But theoretically, this would also be a different username and password. That way, if someone got into this box, they couldn't change they couldn't change any information about our stuff. For deployment server, this would be if you wanted to have a bunch of different universal forwarders for like different boxes. You could set them all up to get like their configurations from a server and basically pull those down. That way you don't have to go to each box and say, hey, send it to this IP address now because we changed it and I have to do that on like 50 different boxes. I can just say on the deployment server, hey, tell everyone to switch it to this. We're not going to do that since we're just setting up a few instances and only one of the universal forwarder, but that would be an option. And it did not take this long last time I did it. Oh, there we go. Receiving indexer, this is basically where you're sending that traffic. For Splunk, there are a few different places that you can send traffic. If you have a bunch of information coming in, you can send it to a specific or to a different receiving indexer than your Splunk server. Basically, what that's going to do is it's going to allow one point of contact to go through and organize the information before sending it to where you as an administrator would see it. So basically, if I had like 50 different boxes, I could have 10 of them going to 5 different receiving indexers. Those machines would go through, organize that information in a way that would take one machine doing 50 a lot longer than 5 machines doing 10 each. In this case, we're just going to use it as our destination for the Splunk interface, the Splunk server. So we're just going to do 192.168.1.2, and then you can just leave as default. And then we're good to install. We'll allow it through and all that fun stuff. So hopefully now what should happen is
This installer can just be found on Splunk.com, correct?
correct. You can also easily find it if you Google Splunk Universal Forwarder. I think they have an ad that pops up for that, and they've got a normal one that pops up. That would bring you directly to the page where you would download it. Otherwise, you can navigate their website and I'm sure pretty easily find it. We don't care about this stuff, so we're just gonna finish. Okay. Let's go back and make sure that we follow instructions properly. Default is insert here. Didn't figure that one out apparently. However, I think we changed this up so it doesn't need to do that anymore. Yeah, we don't. We fixed that already. So we're just gonna ignore that slide. For this, there are two, for our data sources, there's 2 primary types. You've got uploading the static log files, which is just, I have my machine, I downloaded a file, I'm gonna upload it to look at the information on it. It's a lot easier to look at than if you were to just open that file and see every instance on there. It's a lot of reading. The second was dynamic log forwarding, which is what we're doing now. Yeah, just automatically pulls the logs from that are being sent to it and puts it in there for nice easy stuff. Looking at our data, it's time to go back to our Splunk server. It would have helped if I had finished this part out. Review, submit that. Okay. Now we should be able to start searching. And then the way that this works is it has a lot of filter options for you. So in this case, it's trying to show us from that port that's named Debian in Windows. We're looking for all source types of Syslog, just because that is what we specified. If we delete that, hopefully stuff popped up. Guess not.
You want to log in, log out to the book. I don't know.
Maybe? We'll see.
Windows generates like
Yeah,
ambient events, so
yeah.
probably screwed.
A very big problem that might have arisen from this is that since I was, kind of just sitting around with it, it generated those log files and sent them off automatically. In which case we do have a backup. I've got files on here that were saved already, that were offered just from the Splunk website that we can view. Yeah, that's not gonna be it. We'll go settings. I think it was this one. Okay. One last check, quick. This is basically showing you what Splunk is doing on this computer. So the indexing rate is the amount of data that it's receiving and how fast it's able to get through that data. It can be slowed down by having too much data, and it can be slowed down by having too little data to go through. So that speed is not always a great indicator. CPU usage, it breaks that down. But since it's got that indexing rate, really feels like there should be some events popping up. At the very least from this. Okay. Since that's not working, what we'll do is we'll go back to the front and we'll throw in a static log quick. So we'll go in, add data. And we'll choose upload this time. And select a file. And we'll just take the tutorial data that they provided. We'll do automatic source typing. And yeah. While we're waiting for that, any questions?
Why is it called, why is it called Splunk?
It's a great question that I don't have an answer to, unfortunately.
Isn't that like Splunking, like caves?
Maybe. It might just be a cool computer name. I'm sure there's actually a reason for it. Okay. Start searching. Okay, and here's a much more normal view of what the data would look like. It's a bit difficult to see individually what each thing is. It just separates those log events rather than interpreting them yet. But what it allows us to do is that if we scroll down and take this account ID right here, let's say, we can come up then and do just this, I think, and it should limit it to anything that has just that. So this would work really well if you're looking for a specific IP address on your network. So like if you know that red team has infiltrated via this IP, you can look for it through that. It also works for like if you have a web server up and it's throwing errors, you can look to see when it's throwing what specific error. So if you know it's throwing like a 503, you can search for 503 and it'll pull that up. It does allow for wildcard stuffs. So if I replace the last 4 digits with a star, it should still pull this one up. And it's gonna be too specific to pull up like other account numbers, but theoretically if you had like, if you want to find out all 400 level like web errors that get thrown, you could do a 4 star and it would pull up all of those. If it's able to break it up like this, we should be able to do this very similar to what they have for host and source. And we'll just change this one back to the 4259. So if you wanted to be specific in what you were searching and specify what type of thing you want. So yeah, let's go back and see if there's anything else. Yeah, so I just learned Splunk super recently, like within the past week and a half, and a lot of it happened today. I'm gonna be honest. So I probably won't be able to answer a ton of questions if there are any. I know Dr. Wellu is a Splunk guru, so he would probably be more than happy if you had any questions that were not super easy to find on the internet.
Can you go back to the log that you were showing?
Yeah. Would
Can
you
you
like?
can you expand it? Like, can you get all the nitty gritty details and whatnot?
Yeah. So my guess is it would break it up for each field.
Seems like it.
In my experience, that's what's happened. It. Okay. So it appears that if you wanted to add like something else to it for information, you could. So like if I wanted to not care about the source for whatever reason, I could deselect that and it would not show up then in our viewing there. So for anything, if you're interested about learning more stuff, like I said, the documentation that Splunk has put out for this is incredible. It's not quite as good as Microsoft documentation for Windows, but it's pretty close. If there's something that you want to do, they've got that documentation somewhere. It just might be a bit dry figuring out where it is. Another great thing is Tutorials Point has an incredible beginner's tutorial to Splunk. It was super helpful for me, kind of the primary thing that I used when creating and learning about Splunk. And yeah, it's absolutely incredible. It has pictures to help you go along. So yeah, any other questions? Awesome. Well, that is all I've got then. And yeah.